That's a great question, man. I honestly think it's that resilience piece. I think I'm noticing I work with a lot of youth athletes in sport, and what I'm noticing now is teenagers are maybe a little bit less resilient than before, looking for instant gratification type things. And I'm trying to reverse engineer what I'm seeing that I think these teens were maybe underserved as kids and reverse engineer that back to what I can do for my son. So it's teaching him resilience and a form of healthy masculinity, despite all of the pushback we see from that, all of this talk of toxic masculinity online and what it means to be masculine and all of that. So how can I teach respectful masculinity to an 8-year-old boy? He's 8-year-old eight at the time. Sorry, currently. How can I teach that to him now without wanting to do anything that might be considered detrimental? Because we live in an age of information. We see so much great stuff on parenting, but sometimes the more you know, the more you think you're getting wrong. And sometimes ignorance is bliss. I think when I was a child in the way that I was raised, there was none of this consideration. There was no social media with all of these parenting experts giving different bits of information every single day. So my dad raised me and my stepfather raised me to be resilient, to take ownership, to have a work ethic, to get on with things. They never discounted me when times were hard, and we did have good mental health discussions growing up. But I think there wasn't so much caution, and sometimes I think caution these days can be an issue because we're also worried about saying the wrong thing to a child that we might be actually robbing them
It's
of
so
some core skills,
interesting
which is
that
that
we
resilience
are so
piece.
afraid to say the wrong thing that we truly believe in our own ego to know we're saying the right thing. But in reality, it's like, well, how do you know the right thing is even the right thing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The other thing too is I think what I've learned is don't be afraid to be honest if you get something wrong to your child, and I think that actually taking accountability. There's been times where Hudson has been overtired and a bit dramatic, and I've said to him such like you're being. I think you're just tired, mate. You're being a bit dramatic, and it sort of escalates from there. And if I ever say anything that I regret in the moment, I'll stop and I'll say, Hudson, I'm sorry. I can see, you're tired. I shouldn't have got angry. Maybe let's do something else. So I think just taking ownership in the moment as a parent and saying, look, I haven't got it wrong. I'm not perfect. Let's work together on this. I think that's something that has been really important for me is learning that. Don't pretend that you have all the answers and be honest about that. And you actually earn a lot of trust and respect from your child when they see that dad's
Which
taking
does
some
take
ownership here.
courage.
He doesn't
So I
pretend that
want to ask,
he's
where
perfect.
did that was that courage kind of ingrained in you when you were growing up, or is that something you've developed over time to go, you know what, I'm going to have the courage enough to be wrong in this moment, especially as it comes to parenting?
I definitely think it comes through courage. I think when I started in the fitness industry, there was a lot of times where I didn't know the answer, but I didn't want to be seen as someone who didn't know the answer, and I wanted to be the expert because people are paying you for your time and your services. So there was probably times when I answered questions for people that I actually wasn't that confident that I knew. And over time, I realized that you actually gain some authenticity when you're willing to say, I'm actually not sure. I'm going to go and research that for you and come back to you. So I think I learned that as I matured in my career in the fitness industry. And that's just something that when my son was born, which was 5, 6 years into my coaching journey, that I sort of already had. I could see the result it had on the person in front of me as a coach. And I wanted to carry that on for my son because I want him to be able to take ownership when he doesn't know something and to tell somebody, I'm sorry, I don't know, and not
Do you
pretend that he
feel
has all the
that
answers all the time either.
social media has had a positive impact to maybe not just your own parent, but the parenting that you see around you, obviously working with other people that do have children? Do you find that it's had a mostly positive impact, mostly negative impact, or kind of somewhere in the middle? I know it's a hard question to answer because there is goodness out there. There's some good people putting out good stuff. There's zero barrier to entry. So there's a lot of stupid people putting out stupid shit, which is easily infiltrated into our kind of day-to-day conversation because you don't control what you see entirely.
Yeah, I would say I think it's just a tool and it's how we use it and how much weight we put onto what we're watching and receiving on social media. What I would say is some of the good, I'll start there, is like simple dad and child date ideas. So take your kid here, try this at home. Like, for example, if it wasn't for social media, some of those rainy day activities that I do with my son now that he loves, I wouldn't have those because I've just found them through social. So I think like the bonding opportunity ideas that people that are more creative than myself have come up with, that stuff's great. I think legitimate parenting advice on social media, I would be a little bit more cautious around. I think that as parents, we know our children better than anyone else does, better than any textbook could. So I think we have to have some trust and faith in our own ability and our own understanding of our child, that strong bond. And then I would just look at the legitimacy of the sources. So if there is a parenting expert or a pediatrician or child psychologist on a podcast and you see a snippet of that on social media, there's probably some good information there. And then you should actually go and listen to that whole podcast rather than just take that snippet out of context. I think if it's a random parent that you don't know their background, I probably wouldn't put too much weight into what you're learning there because it's very easy in an age of excess information to feel more confused. I think stick with the experts and stick with your own intuition and that bond you have with your child, and you'll probably
Something I've
find
been thinking about and
that you're a pretty good
struggling
parent
to
already.
answer, and perhaps it's not even a question that needs answering, perhaps it's more of a journey that never gets answered. And it is, how do you know when parenting has been successful? How do you know if you've succeeded at this thing called parenting, and is there such a thing?
Yeah, I'm not sure. My son's, as I said, he's just 8 now, and I hear this great cliche all the time of it's the job that you work yourself out of. You know, when you do a really good job, you raise kids that are confident, capable, healthy, happy. They're able to navigate challenges, and they're able to build a community of good, positive people around them. So I think they would be some of the, I guess, the criteria. Um, but it's, yeah, if you have helped in a way and you've done a really good job in your parenting journey, they're going to become quite self-sufficient, which is great. That's what you want for them. But you're going to have to parent less and less, and you'll get some of that empty nest syndrome. So it's one of those jobs, I'm saying in air quote, that you do work yourself out of. But yeah, I don't know. I would say they would be some of the measures. I'm sure I missed many. But again, if they're confident, capable, happy, healthy, resilient, and you know that they've got some good friends around them because they've cultivated that friendship with like-minded people and positive people, I think you
What
could
do you
be pretty
think
happy that you've
is
done a good job.
the most difficult part of parenting? Because is it, if anyone's not a parent yet, I think that the narrative is they tell you about all the good things and how cute they are when they first start to crawl and all that sort of fun stuff. But there's also so many more difficult things that occur when you're a parent that I don't think many people prepare you for. So what in your eyes, in your experience, has been the most difficult part of parenting, and how have you navigated that, whether successfully or not?
Many unsuccessful times. Look, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be a, I'm a single dad. So my biggest challenge with parenting is time away from my child. And even now, I mean, we've been separated. I've been separated from his mother for more than 4 years. Even now, after he's had his week with me and he leaves, I on the drive home, because I he goes to school about an hour away from where I live. So I'll drop him to school, and on that hour drive home, I have no music, no podcasts, and I kind of reflect on our time together. And sometimes I get in my head and think, did I really show up for him the way that I would want to, that I'm proud of, the way that he needs? And I do believe I'm um, quite a good father, but it doesn't stop that day that you drop your child off as a single father and you're about to have that distance, that sort of negative spiral creeps into your head a bit because genuinely you miss them and you want to do what's best for them. So I would say for me, the hardest thing as a single parent has been navigating that. It's always a Monday for me. So that Monday when I drop my son off at school is the head noise of, did I show up in the way that I would love to? If you have a partner and you can bounce off each other, that might not be the same case. I'm sure that would be a different challenge. I would say for new parents, as part of your question, people that aren't parents yet but are maybe getting ready to be parents, I think one of the biggest challenges is obviously sleep deprivation. I hope everybody listening who's about to have a child has a great sleeper. But sleep deprivation and managing your normal workload and your schedule on however half the sleep or whatever you had beforehand. And I think a big thing is that communication with your partner. navigating that and making sure your relationship is solid, that you're supporting each other through the changes, through the sleep deprivations. You're having the deeper talks or the harder talks that are needed because you're a team and you're supporting each other and you're raising this child together and you want to give that child the best life. So I think navigating that change in communication and things that need to be communicated early on, because you are naturally going to struggle a little bit with sleep deprivation. I think the sleep deprivation itself, and then I think for single parents out there, it's navigating that mindset on the day that you don't have your child, or the days that you don't have your child and you miss them and you're waiting for them to come back. So I gave you a few challenges there, but I think they're the ones
No,
that sort of
thank you, man. Thank you
resonate
for
with me,
being
and they're a
vulnerable
constant
and
theme in
open
the
enough,
work that I
because
do.
it is a reality. You know, there's going to be single parents that listen to this. There's going to be people going through very varying challenges, and it's always good to be able to hear from a truthful and honest perspective, to say, this is how I'm feeling, this is how I navigate things, as I would have a very different experience to yourself. I think one of the best quotes that or kind of phrases that I heard around parenting is like, the most challenging part is that you are teaching someone that you can't live without how to live without you. As soon as I heard that, it hit me, and I was just like, "Fuck me!" I
Yeah,
was like,
absolutely.
that's so true. That's so true." Because
Yeah,
ultimately, there's going to be a finite amount of time where you're able to spend with your child, and then you're not going to see much of them. I mean, as soon as they're hitting their mid to late teens, they're off and they're doing things with their own social connections and friends and all that sort of stuff. And you're like, fucking hell, I used to see this person, every second of every day. And then they went to school a little bit less so. And then they had their own lives, and then so on and so forth. Now I only see them every holiday or every month.
yeah, yeah. There's this. I'm gonna butcher this. I'm not even gonna quote any figures, but there is some percentage that they've given that by the time your child's 5, you've already done X percentage of the actual parenting that you'll ever do, and it's quite large. It's an exponentially large proportion of your actual parenting journey by the age of 5, and it puts that into perspective, because then they go off to school. They're there 6 hours a day for 13 years, university, workforce, have their own family, and all of that. So that first 5 years, you actually do the bulk of your parenting,
Yeah,
and that's a very
there's a
short
graph.
amount
I
of
can't
time in
remember
the
the
scheme
exact
of
name of the
things.
graph, but it basically just shows you the amount of time that you spend with your kid from when they're 0 up to when they're 80, including when at your death and demise. It's taken into consideration with that as well. When you look at that graph, like it's so small. It's so small, because
Yeah,
you've got to think that you don't spend every second of every day with your kid. You've got job, you've got obligations, you've got to look after your own health and wellness and all that sort of stuff. So the actual time that you spend with these people has to be so intentional. It has to be so, and again, this is not to say you're always going to get it right, but at least you're present. And if you're present in the moment, regardless if you're doing, things that
yeah, for sure.
you think are you could make better choices on, or you may have you've failed in that particular moment, or things that are all good. I think the very act of just being there and going, I'm going to be here, and I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to do the best that I possibly can with this moment. I think that's a huge part of just being a parent. I'd love to delve a little bit into your history and,
Yeah,
and
oh,
see
absolutely,
where
absolutely.
where I can dig into enough. And again, you feel as open as you want sharing about this thing. And this is to do with body dysmorphia, sorry, and anorexia. When you were through that period or that phase of your life, do you remember the moment in which you thought to yourself, I think something's not quite right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I'm an open book, mate, so you can ask any question, dig as deep as you'd like to. I'm of the opinion that I had that experience so that I could share about it and help others in some way, shape, or form. So I started having symptoms of anorexia when I was about 13, but the disorder didn't sort of fully take over until I was, say, 16, 17. When I was 17 years old, I weighed 39 kilos, at the same height that I am now, which is 5'10", 5'11", or something. So painting a picture, very skinny, very lethargic, falling asleep at school, all of that. But despite all of that, I never actually felt like I had a problem. I felt like I was quite in control. That's what it does. It's a disease of control more than anything else. You have this very strong voice in your head that's leading you to do things. It's leading you to lie, to be a little bit mischievous. Never like you're not going to go and vandalize and break into cars or anything. Mischievous in the way around food. So you're disguising what you're eating, throwing food out, doing whatever you can to avoid actually eating food. Because for some reason in your mind, that gives you some sense of ownership and control over some part of your life. I wish it had given me control over other things that were much more productive or conducive to a healthy, happy life. But that's what I ended up with at the time. The moment that I knew that I actually had a problem and it clicked for me is I remember I was banned from going to the gym. I'd started at the gym when I was about 15 to get strong. I played rugby league and to get strong. And it started off pretty well. The first sort of 6 months, that's what it was. I was eating like 3 bowls of Nutri-Grain, for those who know the cereal, and then going straight to the gym after that and just having these following Arnold's workouts and feeling really good about myself. I'm not sure what the trigger was from that I started to go backward. Like I honestly can't trace that back. But the moment that I knew I had a problem was when I was banned from the gym because I had lost so much weight and was 39 kilos. I was at my dad's house one weekend and my parents were separated, but my mum had informed my dad, Josh is not to go to the gym. He's banned. Don't let him go. I used to go with my dad. So he told me that we weren't allowed to go. So one morning I'd set an alarm. I had like an old, whatever the first phones that came out were. I set an alarm for 2:00 in the morning. We were members of a 24-hour fitness gym. And I got up at 2:00 in the morning, snuck out of my room, jumped the back fence, and I ran. It felt like 10 Ks. I'm not sure the exact distance. I mean, I had no energy. I was underfed, 39 kilos. I don't know the exact distance, but let's say 10 Ks. There might be some GST on that. It might actually be much shorter. This is 2:00 in the morning. I ran to the gym, and to make it more extreme, it's obviously pitch black outside. My stepmom worked night shift, and I had no idea what time she would be coming home. So I thought, I can't run the main roads because if I do and she's coming home, she might spot me. So I'm running all of these back streets in not the best, not the safest neighborhood, let's say, to get to this 24-hour gym. I got to the gym. I did a session in there, and I remember, and this was probably the moment that triggered it, as I was doing, I want to say I was doing upright rows, like a barbell upright row, which is something I would never recommend to anyone anymore as a coach, but that's what I was doing at the time. And this older lady was looking at me, and I don't know why she was there at 2:30 or whatever time I got there. And she just gave me this face, and it was a pure look of judgment and a concerned judgment. And I looked at her face and we made eye contact, and then I turned and looked in the mirror, and it was the first time I actually saw what I looked like. Like any other time I looked in the mirror, I didn't notice that I was this gaunt, 39 kilo, scrawny figure. And if you looked at the amount of training I did, particularly weight training, I should have bloody looked like Mr. Olympia at the time, but that's not what happens when you don't eat food. It was the first time I'd recognized it, and I definitely think it was triggered by the look that she gave me. And I remember I cut my session short because I had this plan laid out, and I did maybe 3 more sets of something just to make the run and all of the extremism worth it. And I ran back home. I jumped the fence to get back into the house, came inside, had a quick shower, put my PJs back on, got in bed, and acted like nothing had ever happened. I've not actually ever told my dad this story, by the way. And I remember getting up that morning, and it was the first morning that I actually felt like eating breakfast. And I'm not going to say I didn't have any slip-ups after this point and do some other unhealthy things, but it was the first morning I got up and we had like muffins with peanut butter and an apple or something. And I ate that, and I didn't feel like I couldn't eat it. I didn't feel stupid for eating it. I didn't have a negative voice in my head saying, don't eat that. All of the noise that I would normally hear had kind of faded at that point. And I definitely think that was the initial trigger. I do think I continued in a still diseased state for a month or so after, but definitely started to take some steps toward recovery. And then when I actually did start to get better, I gained weight pretty quickly. So I met a coach, and I actually listened to the coach. And over the course of 6 months, I went from 39 kilos to 75 kilos. And that was completely a natural transformation. It was just my body was so deprived that I ate a relatively normal diet. In fact, I would say what I was eating then compared to what I'm eating now to gain that 36 kilos. I was probably eating half of the food that I eat now. But in a body that was so deprived, we pulled back the exercise and pushed forward the lever on the food. And I, I could finally stay awake during class. I could finally go back to the gym and actually survive a warm up and not feel like I needed to die. Like it was, I felt like a whole new me. But I think it all stemmed from that night and seeing that look in that
Thank you
old
for sharing.
lady's
I
face
mean,
and
thank you
being
to
like,
the old
I need
lady
to
as well for
change.
giving you the impetus of like, my friend, you need to do something here.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have no idea who she was. I've never seen her again. I certainly wasn't thanking her at that initial look on her face, which was
That's
which was
old
very
ladies in general.
judgmental.
That's old ladies in
Um,
general, though.
but in hindsight, yeah, I was probably listening to music too loud or something. I don't know. Who knows what it was? But I think I'm not so confident that if we didn't have that non-verbal interaction, that I would have seen myself in that light, and that was the light
What
that I
were at
needed to
that
see myself in at the time.
moment in time, what were friends around you, family around you? Was anybody giving the inkling that something maybe, I would say wrong for lack of a better word, but not quite right? Were you seeing any of those signs, or was it just a case of like, this is just the norm for me, so I'm just going to keep living that way?
Yeah, no, definitely. My parents, both my mum and dad, had like they knew that I had anorexia and that I was struggling, and they would not so much my dad, but my mum, quite an anxious person, would lecture me so. And we went and saw a dietitian and a psychologist, and she had booked me in for appointments to try to get me admitted to hospital. And none of those had sort of led to me actually being hospitalized. I think I was quite good at talking my way out and honestly playing dumb to the dietitian and playing dumb to the psychologist. And um, I kind of had the foresight. I understood the condition. I just was in denial that I had it. And I certainly, again, it's a condition of control. I didn't want to put my health in the hands of a hospital or a psychologist or a dietitian or even my parents. I was like, I need to take control of this myself. I wasn't winning the fight or the dance, however you want to look at it. I certainly wasn't winning, but they were definitely aware and they made me know that I was aware. Uh, and I mean, I work with families now who have children with disordered eating habits. And one of the first things I say to the parents is, you have to come at this with love and compassion. If you're anxious and stressed and all of that, that's going to feed onto your child, who's going to sense that you're trying to take that control away from them, which is what that voice in their head is fighting for more than anything. So if you're coming at it from an angle of stress and anger, it's not going to help. It's going to make them double down on whatever it is because they sense that control's being taken away from them. And all they want at this point is not necessarily to be skinny. In the case of anorexia, it's to have control and to, I guess, to silence and appease that inner voice, because it's very hard to listen to and not give in to, if that makes sense. It's a very demanding bully, and logically you know that you're doing something that's can't be healthy, but you can't rationalize it in that state. So, I mean, the parents that I work with now, we come at it with love and compassion. We make sure that the recovery and the understanding is child led and child focused so that the child can still take ownership. However, what they're taking ownership of now is the journey back to health. So we've acknowledged there's an issue here. We're working together as a family. You're going to lead the process as the teen, because I often work with teens and adolescents. As a teen or adolescent, you're going to lead the process. Your parents are going to help to keep you accountable to make sure that you are moving in the right direction. But the most of the session is spent with the parents saying, hey, I know you really care for your child, and that's why you're coming from a place of worry and fear and stress. But when you carry those emotions and you put those emotions into the sufferer, it's not going to help the situation. So as hard as it is, we have to come from an angle of love,
How
not
is
an angle
that
of stress,
met
if that
when you
makes
have that
sense.
conversation? And essentially, and yes, they're coming to you for help, but it's a case of you putting it back on them to say, hey, well, this is the way we're going to have to handle that. Is that generally met with, okay, cool, we're willing to listen? Or is there still their own, potential protection or even parenting ego that comes in place of like, no, 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 I want to do it in this particular way?
It's interesting. There is some parenting ego definitely at play, but I think the parenting ego is almost internalizing the problem. So not saying that I am the only one that can fix this and I'm going to tell my son or daughter what they have to do. It's almost you have to deliver it in a way where mum or dad doesn't think that they are the cause of the anorexia, because they're often not. I would say 99.9% of the time it's not that at all. But if you start to come to the parent and say, hey, leading from a place of stress and worry could make this worse, they may trace that back to, have I started this condition? So you're almost at that point counseling the parent, saying, no, 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 that's not what I'm saying. We're saying this is the point we're at now for whatever reason. And this is how we're going to work together to help bring your son or daughter back to health. And it's going to be a process. It's a journey. We literally call it an eating disorder recovery journey. It's a journey because it's not a overnight quick fix. As I said, in my own case, that day definitely started the process of recovery for me, but there was a few months of slip ups and less than ideal behaviors before I actually started to gain momentum in the right direction, led by a coach who spoke to me and not my parents, right? Like he came to me, he had worked with the South Sydney Rabbitohs, not a team that I go for, but authenticity, authority straight away. I love football. He's coached football. You can help me. I'm willing to work with you. And that was he let me take control of the process. He gave me guidelines and let me work within those guidelines. So it wasn't talking at me, this is what you have to do. It's like, we're going to stick within these parameters and you can decide how you do so. And that was really helpful to me. So my normal process, and I would definitely go, and I'm not a psychologist, I would definitely go and see a psychologist first because it is a mental condition. So I'm just putting that disclaimer out there first. My process of working with a family is firstly speaking to the parent or carer in person, understanding what's going on, what they've noticed. Is there a formal diagnosis? Do they suspect a diagnosis? And then actually just going and sitting one-on-one with the child, as long as they are comfortable with that. If they want mum or dad present, that's totally fine. But again, being a condition of control and being someone who has had the condition before and recovered from it, sometimes the child's more comfortable just speaking to me, not having the parents present, and then we can start the process of it being, I don't want to use the word victim, but sufferer-led from that point, if that makes sense. I do think that's in my opinion, the missing link in a successful eating disorder recovery journey is allowing the person who's actually suffering with a condition to take some ownership over the recovery process, rather than you have to do this, you have to do that, X, Y, Z, because that, to me, that's possibly one of the worst ways you could approach it. There's going to be some conditions and some cases where that's the only option because they are so close to losing their lives because they are so far gone. And in those cases, of course, that's what has to happen. So I don't speak for every single case, but I think in general, allowing the victim or the sufferer to have some control and ownership over the healthy recovering process is something that the families get behind, the individual themselves get behind, and their future self can get behind, because they are essentially living
Do you
again.
ever
They're creating a
wonder
second life and a second
or
opportunity for
worry
themselves.
if your kids might take path inadvertently for whatever reason? Because you took it for whatever reason. Again, it wasn't led by your parents or anything. It just kind of happened. Do you ever worry that any of your children might go down that kind of path, if that makes sense?
Yeah, look, there is a an understood genetic component to some eating disorders, and I think one thing that I have to be cautious of is being hyper sensitive to that. So sometimes if my son's overtired, he might make a comment and I've got to try to not read into it too much and not go into counselor mode, but understand he's just an 8-year-old who's overtired and who has just said something body related. Like he might be like, oh, my arms aren't as big as yours, and he'll come and, like, we've got little weights in the garage, like 2 kilo dumbbells, and he'll start doing this or whatever. Like if we're out the front doing some gardening, I've got the mower out, he'll grab those. I don't even know what they're there for. I can't remember why we have them in the first place, but he'll make a comment like that, and it's an innocent throwaway comment because we're out there, we're gardening together and all of that. But sometimes I got to catch myself not being too what does that mean? Does that mean he's starting to have body image issues or whatever? So yeah, it is a consideration of mine that, I mean, any child at any time could develop an eating disorder. But I think that what I have to worry more about is overthinking everything that he says. And I hope, and I touch wood, that he's got nothing but a clean bill of health for the rest of his life. But should anything come up,
I love that answer, and that's
he
all we
knows
can
that his
really
dad
hope
will
for,
be there
right?
for him no
Is to
matter
know
what.
that we're there. It's like, regardless of what happens, regardless of the monsters that you have to fight, I'm right here by your side, and let's go through this together. I'm curious about the work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then, I guess with the older population being just men in general, do you find that when we're looking at performance, looking at, I guess, from a place of control and working with men and men's mental health, is there a control component of that, of where they kind of fall short and potentially struggle a little bit because they're trying to potentially take too much control of a situation or overthink a situation?
Yeah, I think the most common thing in men is just not talking about it and not knowing how to talk about it and have those more vulnerable conversations. So we internalize one thing and we might be okay. We internalize another thing, we might be okay. When we internalize 50 things, plus work full time, plus if we are fathers, we might be a little bit sleep deprived, trying to take care of the family. And this is not unique to men. There's many mothers who go through the same thing. But I do think that men will internalize to the point of no return and not know how to voice that. And then the symptoms that we start seeing is social withdrawal, self-isolation, which only furthers the problem. We know we have a loneliness and an isolation epidemic in men, because men are more likely to get home from work and just want to crash rather than go out and socialize. What women in general do better than men is they do talk about things that are not just sports or movies or something like that. They will meet up with their friends, they'll have genuine conversations, they will be a little bit vulnerable, they'll have a little bit more depth. For most guys, we'll catch up and talk about sport, which is a lot of fun. I love to do it, love to chat about sport, rugby league, NFL, like you name it. One thing that I've learned over time through internalizing all of that anorexia and now working in a role where I manage over 150 dads groups across Australia where we do talk and we do get vulnerable, is I've learned how to start that conversation and to hold space for other people so that they can hold that conversation. So I facilitate those groups, and quite often I'll run a first group and we'll have men that turn up. They're at least willing to step through the door. And we have different types of dads groups that we run. So we have some activity-led ones, we have some walking ones, and then we have some that you might picture as being a dads group where you're sitting in a room. So I use that as an example. A first session might be people that are a little bit shy, they're not too sure what to expect, they come into the room, they don't necessarily want to talk, they just want to suss out what a men's group is about. And how I would run that session is I will tell a little bit about my story, a snippet, I'll open up, I usually take a footy in with me or something like that, and I'll say whoever's holding the footy, that's the person who's allowed to speak, everyone else will respect that person's ability to speak and get to depth. If they want any interaction or feedback or conversation, they can tell us, but they've got the ball, let's let them share. So what I'll see is men don't naturally have that skill to talk, and I might get one or two people out of a group of 10 that will be willing to open up and share. But by session 3 or 4, everybody's talking. They've built that confidence, they've seen everybody else do it. What a lot of men realize, again, probably not unique to men, what a lot of men realize is the things that we're carrying and internalizing are not unique to us. Every other person in the room has probably experienced the same or similar things. And when you understand that and you see it's not just me who A is carrying this or B who is affected by this, you feel more free to share your story and say, well, actually, I've experienced that too. And you start to see it. So I think a very long answer to your question, I think that it's not necessarily a control thing. It's a lack of ability to communicate because you just haven't cultivated that skill. And that's all it takes, is some time to cultivate, and you'll be able to communicate. And when you can communicate, it's almost like you've been carrying around a backpack of bricks your whole life, and every time you've internalized something, you've added another brick to the backpack. But when you start to communicate it, you can either think about it as somebody else is holding that backpack with you, or you're starting to unload the bricks from the backpack. It just takes practice to actually come and talk and share and get to some depth beyond the score in the football last night or who's going to win
Do
the
you
World
notice
Cup.
a pattern in the men that come to you? Let's say 10 men have just come to their first session in a group and we're sat around the group. Can you see clearly or not clearly the people that are going to open up and the people that are going to be a little bit more reserved? I guess body language might be a little bit more closed off, bit more hesitant to answer a question. There might be a bit more one-worded. Is there anything that's clear about that? And then how do you help that person that wants to come out? That person that's like, I'm here for a reason. I want to share, but I still feel like I'm not potentially safe enough in this environment because I don't know these people well enough to be able to share.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So what we do find is the more extroverted people tend to dominate the first few groups, and the more introverted people, they're open, they're nodding, they're receptive, they're clearly listening. And I gain more confidence as a facilitator, and anyone else that's facilitated such group would know, to start to, after a few weeks, say, Bob, would you like to share anything? You know their names, and obviously I don't think I've ever had a Bob come to a group, so it's a very safe generic name to throw out there. But Bob, would you like to share anything tonight? No, just listening. Cool, no worries. Anyone else? But the more you do that, the more you just prompt them. Hey, I'm aware you're here. You're listening, which is half of the thing. You're here listening to the dad sharing, so you're a supportive ear, which is great. You also have the same ability to share. And the thing that I think a lot of people will learn and they will start to share over time is it's quite an honor to hear somebody's vulnerabilities and the fact they were comfortable sharing with you, and it gives you permission and courage to open up and share your own over time. And that's the thing I wish people understood about mental health, particularly people who are, say, dealing with depression and they don't want to share it with their close friends because they feel like they might be a burden to their friends. When you actually share to that friend, rather than being a burden, you're giving that friend a great gift because they understand that they mean a lot to you. They mean so much to you that you've been able to open up and share that with them and trust them with whatever it is that you're going through. And I believe it's actually opposite. Rather than that friend feeling burdened, that friend would feel a sense of gratitude. And I think these people who come to the groups and they don't come out of their shell for the first 2, 3, 4 sessions, they start to get that feeling of gratitude and they realize, hey, if I share, this is something that other people will start to feel when I talk. We've had some great examples of dads that have come to our groups and they sit there 5, 6, 7 weeks. They're always there. So they definitely have something that they want to get off their chest or talk about, and they just don't feel ready. But the moment they do, you can see their shoulders drop, their face relax, they have a better posture, they're not leaning forward and looking at the floor anymore, they're sitting upright. They may have a shaky tone because they're not used to it or they're introverted and there's a room of however many people, but they needed to get it off their chest, and you just see a new person behind their eyes and that confidence. And I don't always know this to be fact, but I like to believe that they've come and shared with us. They're now confident to have this same conversation with their wife, their parents, their kids, their friends, whoever it is that they would really like to have the conversation with. We were like the guinea pig conversation for them. So now they can go and have that conversation with the person who matters most to them. And it's not unusual for these people who start to open up to hear the words at the start of the conversation. I have never told my wife this, or I have never told my dad this, or whoever it is. And I did actually have one such person reach out to me after a group and message me. And that's how we started this conversation. I'd never told my dad this, but, and messaged me a few days after the conversation to go, I just sat down with my dad, poured my eyes out, but we had a conversation. He stood up and hugged me. It's the first time he's hugged me in 12 months. I can't remember the exact length of time, but it was quite a significant amount of time. And he said, thank you for, giving me the courage to do so. And it wasn't me that he needed to thank. It was obviously the group of men that were there that he felt comfortable to share too. But stories like that. So for anyone listening, if this is you and you've got something and you know that you would love to talk about it in a group, I don't care what group you go with, go and talk about it. You will feel so much better. And the net beneficiary of it will not just be you, it'll be all of the people that you care about in your life, whether they are the one that receives the information or the one that receives you, who is now lighter for
And that's the
having
real
shared
impact,
that
right?
with someone
It's
else.
the generational impact, potentially. It's the impact that you have on your own health and well-being, mentally and physically, but your children and their children as well, because how you're showing up every day is impacting them, whether you like it or not, especially when you've got kids and you, I think, have a responsibility to be able to take that ownership. And yes, it's going to be hard. And yes, it's going to be uncomfortable. But through the work that you do and the courage that you give them, and don't discount yourself in this, and the people around you and the men around you, it allows people to be able to be courageous enough and borrow a little bit of courage maybe from you guys, so that they can then improve their own life and they can improve the lives of their own family as well. So it has this beautiful generational knock-on effect, I think, to their kids and their kids' kids, etc.
Yeah, exactly. We look at through our work a lot intergenerational parenting, and how one generation feeds into the next and feeds into the next, and how we parent as a combination of what we learned directly from our parents, and from what we felt was absent from our parents that we don't want to be absent for our children. So, a very common example, if we look at the generations that have just gone by, we had a lot of dads who would commute, work full time, stay at home mums, with maybe talking one or two generations ago, but stay at home mums, dad who would leave early to commute to work, come home from work, sit on the TV, go to bed, rinse and repeat. A lot of the men that I talked to who had a father like that, and that's not to say that father was a bad father, that was very normal at the time. He was very hardworking, he was tired. But what a lot of those dads reflect is they respect their dad's work ethic, so they want to carry that on, but they wish their dad was more present or they had more time with their dad. Now, no fault to their dad their own. We have compassion for the situation. We know that was just the time. They were busy, they commute, they went to work, long days and all of that. But the blessing of that reflection is, because they didn't have that time or presence from their dad, they're going to guarantee that they give that time and presence to the best of their ability to their child. So they learn the positive trait, the work ethic, the taking care of your family. They've also learned what they deem was missing from their life, which was that time and connection with their dad. They're going to combine those two and try to do that to the best of their ability for their child, and so on and so forth. And I know there's stuff that my son will take from me that he loves and wants to do for his kids if he chooses to have kids one day. And there's going to be stuff that maybe I didn't get right in his eyes that he's going to try to correct for his own children. And that's okay.
Is
And
that
that's how it's going to
one of
go
those
on,
things
so
where
on
you're
and so
supporting the
forth.
footy? I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he didn't get this from me. He's the biggest bandwagon fan of all
He,
time.
he
So
backs
his
the
team
winners. All
changes
right, he backs the
on
winners.
who's on top of the ladder every week. My team, exactly. I'm obviously in Australia. My team has won one game in the last 12 months, and we're on the bottom of the ladder. And
That's rough.
he,
Well,
yeah,
as
I
we're
stick with
into
him. He does
sporting, are
not.
you watching the World Cup? Are you a fan of the World Cup and the athleticism and everything that goes involved with it? Or are you not a soccer fan?
I Not a huge soccer fan, but definitely respect the athleticism. I hear the stories. I watch the highlights. Obviously, Australia won their first game, and it was funny the amount of people in my life who are also not soccer fans, that are all of a sudden sharing that result. Um, yeah, so I haven't kept up with it, but very impressed with some of those athletic displays. And weirdly, I was talking to one of my clients today. I've got an 8-year-old client who's a soccer player, and I don't know how we got onto the topic, but I said, if you couldn't go for Australia, who would you go for? And he had about 10 teams that he listed to me, because they were all good teams and had his favorite players in them. Um, and my second team, I've decided, is Japan, and I can't explain why.
Underdogs,
But
underdogs,
I'm
and they've
backing them.
actually got a really strong team as well. They've. I don't know if they'll get to the final or anything, but they'll definitely make it past the group stages, and I think they'll do okay. I think they'll do okay. The segue
I hope
from
so.
what's realistic on the athletic endeavor is your work with the Roosters. How are you finding that at the moment? What are we learning at this point in your coaching career about working with a team of that caliber?
I love it. So I work with the Roosters development program. So we have athletes coming in that range from 13 years of age up to 27 years of age is our currently our oldest athlete, which is with a reserve grade women's team. So these are male and female athletes, and in the summer months, I'm paired with the men's program, and I have the Harold Matthews squad, which is aged 15 to 17. It's technically under 17s, but some of the 15s get pushed forward because they're quite developed and quite athletic. So in that sense, I am the head strength and conditioning coach for that team, and that's fantastic. I think they have obviously a lot of skill and a lot of potential being in this program, but they have access to some world class facilities, coaching, not just from myself, obviously the whole staff that's involved, and such a great opportunity to succeed and thrive in the sport. The thing that I love most about it is actually not the X's and O's of the sports performance. It's the cultural piece and watching these, particularly this age group, grow into young men, young, capable men. And there's so much work that we put into culture and communication because we know that out of our squad, I mean, we started with 54 players last year, and then you cut that down to a squad of 25, and then only 18 can actually suit up on the weekend. We know that out of those 18, not all 18 are going to make it to the NRL and be professional athletes as a career. So our role on paper, or my role on paper, is a strength and conditioning coach, but I definitely feel that our real role is developing young men, young, resilient, strong men who are healthy, happy, capable, well connected. There's obviously a lot of history in sport of obviously drugs, alcohol, gambling, poor decision making. I'll just summarize it all with the words poor decision making. And that's something that we work really hard in our culture to coach against. So our past season finished in April in the men's program. And what I would say more than anything, we had some great measures of strength and fitness improvements from an S&C standpoint. I mean, we test things like the Bronco, the 20 and 40 meter sprint, 3-rep max bench, 3-rep max squat, max pull-ups. We saw great improvements across all of those, which was fantastic. We actually had a season where we had 0 non-contact injuries, which from a strength perspective is awesome. But my highlight at the end of it was none of the games or the wins or the tries or the celebrations. It was just seeing them develop in their confidence and their connection to one another and how they related to, say, the match officials, like going up and shaking the match officials' hands, like the ref, the touch judges, even the timekeeper, doing those sorts of things, those cultural pieces. So that's one thing I think I was blown away by working in this program, is how much emphasis is now put on that. It's not just about creating the fastest athlete or the strongest athlete. It's that, yes, but it's creating strong, capable, kind humans. And in the winter months, I work in the women's program, and we have our Harvey Norman squad, or it's now called the Women's Premiership Squad, which is reserve grade to the NRLW. So at any moment, any of our players can be put into that professional NRLW team. And it's a different challenge again, because these are people who are already developed, already mature, and it's not so much on the cultural piece. Now it really is on that high performance and communicating those performance standards. With the women's team, I'm not the head strength and conditioning coach. I assist our strength and conditioning coach, and I also assist our head coach. So on game day, rather than doing warm-ups and accel, decel, getting people ready for the field, helping out the physio, on game day, I'm on the walkie-talkie talking to the coach, and we're talking about what's going on the field, and what changes need to be made and what substitutions and that sort of thing. So it's a very different for me, but I love all of it. And yeah, the biggest thing is it would be an incredible experience, I'm sure, to work in high performance sport. But I think given my background and the kind of work that I do, going back to the eating disorders with teens and adolescents, this athlete development program side of things, I just love, because it's not just about making them professional athletes and that's their career. It's about nurturing the whole person and that integration of the sports performance, the mental aspect, the cultural piece, and developing a human who's just capable and who's kind. that's the part that I thrive on and love. And so being involved in this environment, I think the biggest the biggest realization for me was just that I came in as a strength and conditioning coach thinking I'm well research experienced. I'm going to do XYZ in the gym and on the field, and we're going to see some incredible performances. That's what I came in, and that was definitely my coaching ego wanting to make an impact. But I very quickly learned that that's 10% of the role. The 90% is developing the whole human. And you see that translate on the field, not just in how they tackle someone or how they get back on side or how they make a line break or score a try or whatever. You see it in the moments when something good happens and they get behind their teammates and they're all celebrating. And you see it in the moments more so when a mistake is made and they still get behind each other and they say, let's refresh and go again. I mean, in the girls program, anytime they're scored against, they get in a circle, they take a deep breath, they take a deep breath, they take a deep breath, they do a set of 3, they have a little mini chat, they take another deep breath, they reset, clap their hands and go again. It's those things that I didn't expect when I came in, and I was just thinking about the X's and O's and how much max velocity work we're going to do, or high speed running, or strength versus power versus hypertrophy versus prehab, rehab, all of this stuff. It's been
It's such an
more about
interesting
working with the
time
whole
that
person,
really,
and
as you
I've
enter
loved that.
teenage years, from like 13 right up into 18, I guess that's kind of the window of like, are they going to make it into the professional team, or at least give them the best shot of doing so? And just going from my background, doing that very thing, being able to have camaraderie around another, just, I mean, it's men's team, right? So a group of men. I'm sure it's the same with the women's team as well. But in order to be able to build exactly what you said, it's character traits, it's resilience, it's respect for the game. And having respect for the game, for the referee, for the timekeeper, allows you to be able to respect people outside of the game, because that's how you roll. Like, this is the fucking level of discipline. This is the standard that we've been taught through the game. And this is any sport. Mine just happens to be rugby league as well. And it's also the avoiding things like the alcohol and the drugs and all that sort of stuff, which I saw players go down that path, and you could very clearly see, you're like, this is affecting you. Your game's off. What's going on? And then all of a sudden you see this downward spiral, and this player could have been great. And you see that happen in real life, and it's really saddening. But also, kind of simultaneously, the silver line is, because you see that, you know to avoid that, because you see the negative impact it's had on that particular person's life, that you start to make better choices. And because you don't make those better choices, you don't go down that path. And it massively does true sort of, I guess, like justice to your ability to keep the dream alive, to work really hard towards the thing that matter for you, to have, as we mentioned before, respect and sportsmanship as well in the game and outside of the game. So I think it's just such a great period of life to get involved with some kind of team, whether you're a little bit older in a men's group or a women's group, whether you are going through a teenage years, like, get involved in a sport. I'm sure solo sports have got some kind of similar mechanism, but I think there's nothing better than a team sport. Because if we think from an anthropological perspective, going back to community, you're building your own community with
Yeah.
like-minded individuals that are all the same age as you, that are going through the same kind of struggles in life, and also relishing and being able to enjoy the upsides of life as well by going through that age as well. And you're not doing it alone. You are with other like-minded people going through that period. And I think it's one of the best things in life, really, especially at that age, to be able to do.
I couldn't agree more. I think you learn so many lessons, and to anyone listening who might think they're not athletic or sport inclined, it doesn't just relate to high performance sport. Like, if you don't think you're athletic, there's nothing wrong with going and playing 5th division local touch with some friends from school or work, or touch football, tag, soccer, basketball, paddle, pickleball. It doesn't matter. We know, particularly for men, that I mean, I talked about the men's circles and men's groups before, but we know that men are less likely to be open there. They're more likely when they're doing something that's physical and active, and I mean, plus if they're out in nature. But if they're doing something physical and active, they may not get to any depth and vulnerability, which is I guess the benefit of the men's group. But they will at least not feel lonely and isolated, and those feelings are quite often what leads people to come to the men's group in the first place. So I think that sport environment, man, yes, we talk about resilience, we talk about obviously just general markers of health, There's so many benefits, but I do think that connection and that shared success and shared failure, I think you learn so much through that carries on for the rest of your life. And when you have those exact same things in the workforce, the success feels great, the failure feels like you're going to lose your job and not be able to provide for your family. If you fail in a, let's say it is that 5th grade touch football game, no one's going to care. It's just the stakes aren't as high, but I think the reward is even higher, if that makes sense. So I definitely recommend, even if you're not, if you don't feel like you're athletically gifted, there's still some kind of activity out there that you're going to love. And look, I can't speak for gaming and things like that. It's not something that I do, but I still see benefit if you're definitely not going to go and play a sport and you're definitely not going to leave the house because that's not your thing. If you can if you're into gaming and you invite some friends over and you play Mario Kart, whatever it is, there's still a lot of value in that because A, you're being silly, but B, you're not alone. You're having a shared interest with some friends, you're connecting. There's still going to be a mental health reward in that. Bonus points if you can do both. You can have the outdoor activity, you can play sport, and then you can come back and have a
So I'll actually
Mario
weirdly
Kart
speak
race
to
off
that
at the
exact
end. I
thing.
think
I
that's
had
a
all of
win-win.
that growing up. Grew up in a household of 13 people, 7 kids, but like my unit and my cousin's unit as well. Wasn't all from the same parent. But we all played a lot of sport, predominantly rugby league. All went on to play a decent level of rugby league. I played professionally for 3 years here in the UK. I played a ton of games. I can name all the games that I was obsessed with. Played a ton of that. Still did pretty well at school. Played outside a lot, just literally on the bottom of the street playing football. And the road side of the curb, that was the pitch. And then you'd have the end of the road, and then that was the goals. And you might put your jumper down on the road, and that was the goals. But we did that a ton. So I kind of got this weird best of all worlds kind of situation. Inadvertently, it just kind of happened. And I think the interesting part about gaming is that when I have conversations with people about gaming specifically, it's seen in a very negative light. And I think anything potentially done to an obsessive level might reveal some kind of negativity to it, or negative components at least. But gaming for me certainly was not that at all. Certainly was that. It increased my ability to be able to problem solve. Some guys are very, very challenging. It takes a lot of fucking thinking, discipline, and resilience. If you remember the original Pokemon Red and Blues, you had to walk around marshlands for a long fucking time just to be able to level up to get to the next level.
Awesome.
You know, and also with friends too. So we'd have friends come over and play FIFA.
100%.
Like, great, we've got a group of five people here, and you just do a round robin, create a little tournament, and you're just hanging out playing this game together. So there was always, and kind of the underlying pinning, there's always a sense of camaraderie and community with all of those aspects.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm now on this gaming tangent, but we had this we ran a dad's group, and when I run a dad's group, it's similar to a men's group. The only difference at a dad's group is the first, say, 10 to 20 minutes, you're talking about a parenting topic. So it's parenting related. The idea is that you're empowering dads. You're talking about a topic they want to learn about. And then after that 20 minutes, it's a normal men's group. So you may discuss the parenting, or you may discuss something that's not at all related to that. And anyway, in one particular group, the topic of interest was screen time and navigating screen time with kids. And this was at a dad's group that was attached to a high school. And so talking, and a lot of dads are saying, my son or daughter spending too much time on, name the device, name whatever they're doing. And what could you suggest? And one of the dads was talking about gaming, and I just can't get my son off gaming. And it wasn't my solution. One of the other dads said, have you ever thought of just sitting down and playing the game with him? Like, have you ever tried that? And the dad said, well, no. I've just pretty much tell him to get off the game and that he should be outside. And in a very non-judgmental way, this other dad said, I can understand, like, we don't want our kids to be that screen time generation. We'd love them to be outside. But next time, why don't you try to play with him and talk to him about the game and understand the game and show a genuine interest in what he's interested in, and see how that goes. And he might not have said that verbatim, but it was around that, and it was definitely not delivered in a way that brought into question the parenting of this other dad. It was a very respectful delivery. Anyway, a month later, we had the next group. The dad tried that, and what he actually found is that he enjoyed playing the game with his son, but that his son didn't want to play for as long because now he'd had this connection with his dad, and they spent more time outside shooting a basketball together. Because dad came to my level, met me where I'm at, understood what I enjoy, tried it, and now I want to spend more time with dad, and dad seems to want to shoot the basketball, so let's do that. So it was that dad giving into the idea that this is just all bad and spending some time with the child and understanding what the child likes, and they bonded over the gaming, which led to them connecting better and going outside anyway. So if there's any parent listening that resonates with trying to get your child off screens or off games, that's a random suggestion, an out-of-the-box suggestion that really worked for that one dad, and
That's
his
really immediately
relationship
where
with
my
his
mind
son
went. And I think it's
blossomed
just
from that point.
about the kind of the underlying factor is like meet the kid where the kid's at. My daughter likes watching like Bluey. Her husband might like Bluey too. It's an Aussie show.
Yeah.
Just gotten into that, and I look at that and be like, "Oh, it's rubbish, isn't it?" But then it's like, well, no. Like they're into it. Let me try and understand this
Yeah.
a little bit. And you're like, oh, who's that character? Or who's that person? And it's like, oh, Bluey's dad's so silly. I'm like, I don't know who this guy is, but it's just like it's understanding, it's connecting with them at their level. And as you said there, it's when then you're like, hey, let's go outside now because we've done a little bit of this. They're like, of course, because it's less about the outside and it's more about time with you. But you just happen to want to go outside. And again, as a parent, and I think one of the challenging things, and I've had this conversation kind of multiple times over the years, is that as a parent or even a carer or a guardian, I think your role, at least the way that I sort of see it, is to be able to nurture and guide. And if you've seen things, and especially in our world, like in the health and fitness and like wellness world, if you've seen things going down a particular path, you know, I know this game, I've seen this unfold. I think it's our responsibility to go, let me try and navigate you in a different direction because I know what that path looks like and it's probably not all great. But let me navigate you down this direction because I've experienced that. I know what that's like. Let's not go down there. Let's not go down the dark path of, again, you would say this to an adult anyway, of like, oh, he just goes drinking every day. It's like, oh, I don't want to say anything. It's his life. He's like, well, dude, you're drinking every day. Like, where do you think this leads to, right? And I think very similar to having kids is, let me navigate you down this path. Hey, let's try and get outside frequently. Let's try and go do some kind of exercise. Let's go do for a walk because you've experienced life. And I think you're doing a disservice or a discredit to your own kid or to the kids around you if you're not using your own life experience to try and help navigate and nurture and guide to go, hey, we're going to go do these things. Why? Because I know these have a positive influence on your life versus the narrative of like, they should be able to choose what they can do. And again, this is just my opinion of like, but she's 3. All she wants to do is eat chocolate muffins every meal of the day. I'm like, maybe not such a good idea. Let's try and do some of these other things. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is the way that I kind of think of it. It's like, we need to use our own experiences, our own lessons, our own failures to be able to, as much as we can, prevent. Not always. There's certain lessons that they need to go through and be able to learn themselves. Like you need to learn to fall so that you can learn to pick yourself back up. Something along those lines is what Alfred said to Batman. That's why we fall, right? So we can learn to pick ourselves back up. We need to learn that. But at the same time, if there's a car coming, I need to step in the way and pull you out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I think, I know we're focused on the child here, but the example of the adult with the drinking, I think you kind of nailed it in that. And I think quite often what we will do in, say, a men's group, if we have someone who comes in with addiction to anything, is we ask them the question, what does your life look like in 6 months from now if you continue this? And what does it look like 6 months from now if you stop this? Hard conversation to have with a 3-year-old. We're going to have to use some of our own knowledge there and help guide them in a way that's explored through play rather than lecturing, which obviously you do. But yeah, I think quite often with an adult, one of the more powerful ways to have that conversation is to either do the deathbed exercise where you take them all the way to their deathbed and say, what are you going to reflect on? What did you do well? What could have you done better? What regrets do you have, essentially? or the exercise where what does your life look like 6 months from now if you continue this daily habit of drinking, the example you gave, and what does it look like 6 months from now if you stop that habit? I think that's sometimes for my own habits. I'm definitely not into any addiction or drugs or alcohol, but it might be if I've had a week where I've overtrained. This is a very trivial example, but and you would I'm using this because you would know it. A week where I felt really good and did 7 days a week in the gym, and then the next week I did seven and I feel really good, and then I have to pause and say, how sustainable is this for 6 months? What's going to happen to my body if I do this? I know logically I'm going to set myself back. So having that foresight in the moment to reflect and sort of trace. So I think that exercise, a 6 month exercise for anything that you're doing,
Yeah, we could
is
keep going and digging deeper into all
super,
of these
super
subject
helpful.
matters. But what I'm interested in is, what are you looking forward to? Rest of 2026, what's up and coming? What excites you?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the rest of this season with the girls. We our women's premiership team. We've only had one game so far. Like we've had our trial matches, we've had one round, and we had a 22-all draw. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this season plays out and the development of the players throughout. I've started working with the Defence Force as part of my role in men's mental health. So we're starting to roll out a program now for members that are still currently active in the Defence Force as well as veterans. I'm really, really looking forward to connecting with some of those dads and families, hearing their stories, but also having the opportunity to support them. I think that would be fantastic. And obviously, we have nothing but love and respect for our military, and can't even pretend to understand the challenges that they have being away from their family for so long, and for their families not knowing, if dad's ever going to come home or mum's ever going to come home. So I think those two things in terms of career, uh, watching my son grow and develop, because there's so much that changes. I mean, you would see it in your kids, but so much that changes week to week. So I can't imagine, what he's going to be coming out with over the next 6 months. Keeps me on my toes.